Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 157, recorded on March 16th, 2022. The Cloud Pod goes on a quest, an AWS Cloud Quest. Good evening, Jonathan, Peter, and Ryan. How's it going?
Hello.
Good.
I feel like we need trumpeted fanfare. Do.
Yeah, these are the things you say in the pre-read so we can get the sound effect before we record, but it's okay. It's fine. We'll make improvements for next time. Like, I could have got that. I have access to sounds. I just didn't know. Well, it's once again a very busy week here in the cloud, as well as Pi Day passed us up just a couple days ago. So, of course, Amazon's here talking about Pi once again. And Google, who trumpeted a few years ago how amazing their Pi calculations were, was silent on the topic. So apparently the marketing buzz of Pi Day only works for AWS, and Google bailed out on that. But before we get to Amazon Pi, let's talk about how do you burn a whole lot of money really, really quick on the cloud. And that was with the biggest and baddest servers you can buy, which was the X1 series, followed slowly by the X2 series. For all your SAP HANA workloads. AWS has even new, bigger, and badder instances for you to throw your money away on today. And that is the new X2 IDN and the X2 IEDN built on top of Nitro and third generation of Intel Xeon Scalable Ice Lake processors with up to 50% higher compute price performance to the X1. I do find it interesting that they compared it to the X1 and not the X2. And for those of you who are like, what's an IEDN server? The holy grail of this is I is for Intel, E is for memory optimized, and D is for local NVMe SSD storage, and N is for higher speed networking. And if you're like, well, how high does it go? It goes to the moon, baby. X2 IDN starts at 64 vCPU and 1 terabytes of RAM with a 1900 gigabyte NVMe drive and up to 50 gigabits of network throughput all the way to 128 vCPU and 2 terabytes of RAM with 2 1900 NVMe drivers and up to 100 gigabits of network bandwidth, all for the low price of either $4,868 for the low end or $9,736 per month for the high end. And if you're like, that's not enough money burning that I can do, the X2 IEDN has you in their sights with the 4 vCPU and 120 gig of memory with 118 gigabytes of local NVMe storage, up to 25 gigs of networking. That's the low end. But on the high end, you can get 128 vCPU, 4 terabytes of RAM, 2 1900 gigabyte NVMe storage, and 100 gigabytes of networking bandwidth. And this cost you only $19,473.48 per month without RIs or savings plan. So there you go. You want to burn money on fire and make your CFO cry. The X2 IDN is your friend. 32 XL size.
I like it.
I feel like this is an angry overreaction to that one guy on any one developer team who thinks that whatever the problem is, it could be solved by throwing more server resources at it. And I feel like they've just released this and said, see, it still doesn't work.
Maybe.
It's still SAP.
I was looking at using one of these to archive my application logs. Good idea. Just in memory, 4 terabytes of application logs, just store them in memory.
Well, you want to recall them pretty fast, right? So totally makes
just
sense.
In case I get audited, just in case.
Yeah, you need that security log from 2 years ago in minutes to satisfy your auditor. Fail the audit finding. Perfect. Yeah, those are pricey. I don't have a use case for either of them, but if I did, I could burn money just like everyone else. So,
what's cheaper, to store your 4 terabytes of application logs in memory on an X2 IEDN, or to pay for Splunk?
Well, in reality, you need the server to run Splunk. Really, you're paying for both. All right. Well, if you are excited about Pi Day, which we mentioned at the top of the show, Amazon is here once again celebrating Pi Day with Jeff Barr blog post here to brag. And so he wants you to know that S3 now holds more than 200 trillion objects. And he then compared it to a bunch of things to make it sound more big and scary. That's 29,000 objects for every resident on planet Earth, for example. If you were to write one object per second, it would take you 6.342 million years to reach this number. Or there are 2 trillion galaxies in the visible universe, so that's 100 objects per galaxy. That is definitely a lot of objects in the Amazon S3 buckets. They do say they're averaging now over 100 million requests per second. And I think they talk about this because they were storing Pi data in S3 at one point, but I think they kind of stopped doing that. So now they just tout about how big Amazon S3 is now and all that durability. But someone pointed out on Twitter, I saw that if you have 200 trillion objects and you have a 11 nines of durability, that's like 2,000 objects you're losing a year.
Yeah.
Which that's a lot of objects. No one's complaining about losing 2,000 objects a year. So you do wonder maybe that 11.9 is just an SLA and not a reality.
I think because it's an average, right? So there's that one customer that just lost a crap load of data.
And he's under a strict gag order. He's like, you're not allowed to talk to anybody. Yes, we lost 2,000 of your objects. I'm sorry, but you can't mention it to anybody. We'll give you a nice big credit.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool though. They actually have the empirical data now to prove they're better than 11.9s potentially.
Yeah, most likely.
Instead of the math. But I'll tell you when I'll be impressed. I'll be impressed when there's as many objects as there are ants on the planet. I had to look it up. 10 billion. Yes.
I know some dev teams that can give that a run for its money. So
I mean, at least 1 trillion of those objects are Ryans. So.
Yeah, exactly. Itty bitty objects.
Lots of small ones. Maybe you can get your credits now in X2 IEDN instances. Just like for every outage you get, I'd like one of those for a month, please, for free.
Yeah,
that make up for your losses.
I got to figure out what to do with it though.
Yeah. Well, you could use it for Elasticsearch, of course, right? That's what everyone uses it for. There's been an issue with ECS for years, and those of you who are familiar with ECS in any probable way probably know exactly what I'm talking about at this moment. When it has to do with ECS services, particularly if you created a service and you said to yourself, "Oh, I don't need a load balancer today." But then 2 weeks from now, you realize, "Oh no, I do need a load balancer because I'm not load balancing my traffic across multiple containers and they die." You then realize that you couldn't do that. You had to destroy the service and re-add it back in, or service registries, or tag propagation, or ECS managed tags, or service registries. All these things had to be managed at time of creation. When sometimes you just don't know. I don't know what I'm doing until 3 days later. I had to debug the container running first, and then I'll figure out how to load balance it. And so they finally fixed this. I think there's a PFR that is my name somewhere in this. That the added flexibility makes it easier for customers to update their Amazon ECS service configuration, as they now support updating the service without having to recreate the service, thus reducing the operational overhead and potential service disruption. And literally 2 weeks ago, I just was setting up a Fargate cluster and had this exact same thing and bitched about the fact that this was still broken.
Yeah.
And so 2 weeks later, it's now fixed. So I appreciate that this is now finally fixed. ECS finally getting features that I actually care about.
Yeah, the amount of mockinizations that we've had to enable behind the scenes to make just common CI/CD patterns work with ECS. It's it's just it was one of those things that I guess I was a frog in boiling water, even though I came from like a Kubernetes experiment to ECS. But it just made sense to me. But then you start running it in practice, and it's nightmarish. And so you're doing all these tricks with DNS and multiple services and trying to spread them out. And so this is nice. They can just update. Thank you.
It's about time. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
And then moving on to ECS features I don't care about. ECS now supports on-premise workload orchestration on top of Windows OS nodes. So they now support customers running and managing their own container-based apps on premises, including virtual machines, bare metal servers, and other customer-managed infrastructure, to now run ECS anywhere on top of Windows to run all of your Windows workloads in containers. So for those of you who are doing that, awesome. You're super happy. For me, I don't care.
But that's running ECS anywhere on Windows, not Windows containers in ECS.
Well, you couldn't run Windows on top of Linux container hosts before. So yes, you had to have Windows agents on the nodes to then be able to run Windows guests on premise with ECS anyways.
Yeah. I mean, that's the real reason for this, right? Because you need Hyper-V in the Windows OS to support those Windows containers. And so this enables that. And I'm sure there's lots of people asking for it for some reason.
Yeah.
And for those of you who have gone like super nuclear on Docker and were mad that EKS did not support Windows Container D runtimes, that's now been fixed as well. So if you didn't like ECS Windows containers, EKS has you now backed up with Container D support in Kubernetes 1.21, and this allows you to have a container runtime that runs on Windows workers fully supported, and a lightweight container runtime that manages the complete container lifecycle on its host system from container image transfer to execution, as well as storage and network attachment. And as we know, all Windows containers are at least 5 gigs in size. And so, being able to manage that is super important in a lightweight method.
I'm starting to get my releases mixed up with between EKS and AKS and just straight Kubernetes. I'm like, didn't they just do one? I don't know where I am anymore. There's too many Kubernetes.
Well, and every cloud provider supports different versions of it, and they're not all in sync, and they don't always adopt the same beta features that the other ones do. Like there is a lot of complexity if you're trying to do multi-cloud Kubernetes.
Yeah. Just trying to make sure that we're covered for Container D, because it is about, I think the latest Kubernetes release, it's the Docker shim is no longer supported in any way. So we're trying to make sure that everything's covered with that, which largely it is, but it's hard. There's a lot of different versions to check and make sure and figure out what's what.
There's lots of Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Many Kubernetes. That's how it works. Well, AWS app config feature flags are now generally available. This allows you to quickly roll out new features safely with more confidence. Of course, AWS app config is part of the feature flag capability is part of SSM and should not be confused with the other the other feature flag feature called Evidently. And the flag is stored in configuration data. Once the feature is ready to be released, engineers can update the flag configuration data without deploying any code. Now, of course, that did require that the engineer actually read the flag to actually have it toggle this on or off. So don't get fooled by the marketing folks. There is work for your dev team to do to still enable this, even though turning on or off the flag does not now require a recompiling.
Magic.
Step 1, you're going to need a whole spike just to figure out where this feature lives in the stupid dashboard.
No. Dashboard complaints.
Oh, it's just SSM. This is one of those things. This should be either a standalone service or somewhere else. The fact that they've buried it in SSM is just a travesty.
I mean, the other choice is they buried it into CloudWatch with Evidently. So
yeah, good point.
Where do you want it buried, in CloudWatch or in SSM? At least in SSM, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It does.
I mean, the console doesn't make sense, but what SSM's purpose is, which is to be a simple systems manager. Conceptually, I agree that the feature flagging capability should be built into that. Now, we can argue about the console all day long and the disorganization of the SSM console, which is a travesty across design patterns. But, there we are.
It is nice having one place, though, to store all the feature flags and sets of feature flags, especially if you've got many different application components.
Well, if you're adopting the SSM SDK into your application, it's only one SDK. You have to now to do configuration, to do feature flagging, to do integration into patching and all kinds of other maintenance window stuff that you can now do. So there's a lot of advantage to it. I wish it was easier to use. It's a feature that only a mother would love. That's how I think about SSM. Well, Amazon RDS for PostgreSQL now supports the MySQL Forward extension for Amazon Aurora, MySQL, and MariaDB, because apparently if you are a NoSQL database that then supports SQL, you had to also be a database that now supports Postgres, I think is how that works. And so Amazon RDS for PostgreSQL adds support for the MySQL FDW, which allows your Postgres database to connect and retrieve data stored in any MySQL-based instance. These foreign data wrappers, which is FDW stands for, are libraries for the PostgreSQL database that can communicate with external data sources, abstracting the details of connecting to the data source and obtaining data from it. So this is a Postgres extension for those.
Didn't we just patch that in Log4j?
Yeah, really.
Wait, this is on purpose?
Kind of wonder who wants to use that exactly. I guess it's nice to have linked tables between different database systems. But those foreign data lookups are really useful. You can build plugins for all kinds of cool stuff. I saw a number of years ago, somebody built an AWS plugin for Postgres, and you could browse the content, browse your instances or browse the deployed hardware as though they were Postgres tables.
Why?
Kind of gives you a secret. Oh, just think how nice that is for reporting. Before billing got better and before FinOps became a thing and those tools didn't exist, you could literally do select instance ID or comma instance type from this region, and it would give you a big ass list of everything that you've got and the tags on there and who owns it, who's running it, all that kind of stuff. It's just a way of gathering data that's not using the regular AWS SDKs. I mean, who doesn't? Which business people don't know SQL?
Well, I mean, the SQL part I get. It's just the populating a data set versus having the data set sort of dynamically populated when queried just seems like I just seems weird to put that at the data layer than the application layer. But
feels like something is too tightly coupled to me between disparate. Because if you have disparate systems like that, why do you have disparate systems? Probably different owners. I don't know.
Anyway, no, foreign data lookups. That's good.
Yeah.
I
mean, versus writing an ETL job in Glue and having it transfer that way, I'll take this every day of the week.
Until it fails.
I wonder when document DB is going to support it.
Why is there blocking coming from our Postgres database? Well, I use this thing because I didn't want to write a Glue job. Sorry.
Exactly. This is rope. This is what I call rope to hang yourself with.
Yeah. Then my response to that would be like, well, if you just given me Parquet files, I wouldn't have had to do this at all. I could just use it.
Exactly.
Well, this story is interesting. So I'm going to try to figure out how to, talk about this in a way that doesn't make me just completely snark about everything about it. So there's two new features. Oh, sorry.
One sec. Don't we have to get our character sheets and roll characters? Let me get my D20s out. I'm going to be
Cloudpod Dungeons and Dragons.
I'm going to be the nerd.
Yeah. I call mage.
Yeah. All right. So let me start with the easy part of this to understand. So Amazon is releasing a new version of AWS Educate that no longer requires the .edu email address, making it more accessible to normal people. And the AWS Education will allow learners as young as 13 now access to hundreds of hours of free self-paced training resources and labs specifically designed for the new to be cloud learners. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, yes, my 13-year-old wants to learn about S3 object durability. I'm sure he's riveted by the concept.
Of course.
And so, I think they were sitting around and said to themselves, how do we get 13-year-olds to be interested in learning about Amazon Education? And so someone said, my 13-year-old is addicted to Roblox. And so the second part of this announcement is the announcement of Cloud Quest, which is a 3D role-playing game. This new game-based role-playing experience, AWS Cloud Quest Cloud Practitioner, teaches you the foundational cloud computing concepts while learners zap drones and collect gems in their quest to solve challenges in a virtual city. And I did this earlier today, guys, and it's interesting.
How was it?
Well, I did the first mission, which was to create basically the mayor told me that I was an aspiring technology person that clearly could solve their problem. And I spit it out to him a bunch of random crap about how they should be looking at AWS because they're taking too long to provision stuff in the city. And he said, that sounds amazing. You should totally do this. And then he asked me to take the tides for the waves for the beach and basically put that onto a static website hosted off of S3. And then it takes you through a lab process where I go and do a lab, and I created a bucket that I named something like Cloud Quest is stupid. And I put in this objects into it. And then I hosted the thing, and then you do a validation, and it validated that I did it correctly. And then it gave me points that I was then able to build a lighthouse with. And so, if you've ever wanted the job of living in a 3D world where a construction worker runs up to you and tells you that the server running in this weather app is failing, and to help them figure this out, this game is for you. And you can learn all the gems and build out your city. And it feels very much like Roblox. The quality of the graphics is very Roblox-esque. And I give it an A for effort and an F for execution. So that's my
I want to wait for the Grand Theft Auto version where we get to go around machine gunning servers down.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do the other side of it. That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I can just hear my son now. They'll be like 11 nines. What the? Not today.
Unfortunately, your son is not at the 13-year-old age requirement for this particular training, so you're going to have your daughter do it, which I'm sure she'll be super enthused about.
Yes.
So if you're curious what your job is like in a Roblox type environment, you can go play with this. I opened it, I did it, I will not be back. But it's interesting to say the least.
I'm curious if because cloud practitioner level, that's sort of sales level understanding. I wonder if salespeople, if we'd have a higher conversion rate of salespeople getting their cloud practitioner cert with this tool.
Well, someone on this podcast has salespeople who work for him, and so he could probably
try it. Should I
try this out.
Definitely try.
You should definitely do this. You should definitely let us know how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We want Foghorn feedback on this next week for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. I'll see if I can get it. And then if nobody does anything, then that tells us our answer effectively.
Yeah. I'm trying to decide whether I use this as like a reward for my children or punishment. Because I can see giving them a punishment and they're like, oh, a video game, and then I trap them. Yeah.
It tells you what to do, which is interesting. It's like, you need to go into Amazon console and you need to create a bucket and you need to make it publicly accessible. But there's no actual step-by-step instructions. So I'm not actually sure that someone who doesn't have familiarity with Amazon already is going to be able to do this. Because
oh wow,
I know things like, hey, when you create a bucket, the ACLs have to be applied to it for public access for the web thing to work. I know that you can't actually specify that it's a static website hosting a creation of the bucket. You actually have to go back into the properties of the bucket after creation to do that. There's things that I just know inherently because I've done this 1,000 times, probably more than that actually. And I've also written the Terraform code to do it, so I know how this works. So I have that concept that I actually knew what they were telling me to do. I don't know that my son would know what they're telling him to do. He'd be like, what's a bucket and what's S3 and how do I get there? So I was like, the game is kind of an interesting concept, but then the implementation of the practice, maybe they do walk you through a diagram of what you're doing. They give you a conceptual diagram of hey, here's the bucket and we're going to have a static website and here's a web page that's going to be in the thing. They give you that, but they don't actually tell you how to do it inside of the console. So, but they do single sign on you into the console, which is nice. And it is a sandbox in the actual console. So you get to actually be in AWS.
Is it an in-game console? Is it like a virtual video screen in the game where you see the console, or you have to
No, it opens a new tab.
Oh, that sucks.
Well, I mean, compared to the fact that you're going to have to go do a research assignment to figure out that your bucket has to be named appropriately for web hosting, to match the domain, all those little gotchas.
Well, they're not even having you do that. They're just using, all you need to do is prove that you rename the index.html page to wave.html page and then give them whatever URL you got from the default bucket. So you actually don't have to do the custom DNS thing. So you don't have that journey to go down on this particular use case. They're not that hard, but they're not easy either.
We'll see. Maybe it's a start of a long, a new thing. But, I'm totally going to, I have a, cloud center of excellence to build out. Why not make them all play video games for work?
I'm gonna need you to roll a dexterity roll for that to see how that goes.
Yeah.
I think it's a fun idea. I think it's cool they tried it. I have a feeling it's not going to catch on.
Yeah, I think you're right.
We'll see.
There's an intern though who's probably really proud. That's all at least I hope this is an intern project, and it's a good intern project if it's an intern thing. But yeah, I hope they didn't spend a lot of money. So we'll see. All right, well, let's move on to GCP, where we find the announcement of the week. So I don't have a sound effect yet. This is an interesting announcement. So Google is announcing major changes to its capabilities and pricing for customers with varied workloads. The plan is to provide you new flexible SKUs, Jonathan's favorite word, that allows you to pay only for what you are using with new product options and capabilities. These changes also align with how other cloud providers charge for similar products, so customers can more easily compare services between leading cloud providers. And net, this basically means some of these changes will provide you a new lower cost option and feature of GCP, and others will raise prices on certain products.
Uh-oh.
Dun, dun, dun.
Some of the specific changes, cloud storage pricing changes for data mobility, including replication of data written to a dual or multi-region storage bucket and inter-region data access. Introduction of a new lower-cost archive snapshot option for persistent disk so that compliance archiving use cases are charged less than compute-intensive DevOps workloads, and new outbound data processing pricing for cloud load balancing in line with other cloud providers, and new pricing for network topology, which will include a performance dashboard with a network intelligence center at no additional charge. And this quote from the article makes me laugh. The impact of the pricing change depends on the customer's use cases and usage. While some customers may see an increase in their bills, we're also introducing new options for some services to better align with usage, which would lower some customers' bills. In fact, many customers will be able to adapt their portfolios and usage to decrease costs, and we're working directly with customers to help them understand which changes may impact them. The new pricing goes effect on October 1st, and if you are in a situation where your data is in the wrong area and you want to move it, they're letting you use the storage transfer service for free from April 2nd to the end of the year to adjust your locations before they charge you a crap ton of money. TechCrunch breaks it down pretty nicely for us. Always free internet egress goes from 1 gig to 100 gigs. So that's in matching with what AWS did in theirs. And then the core storage feature, like multi-region nearline, will see a 50% increase. With operations for Google Cloud Codeline Storage at Class A will double from 10 cents per 10,000 operations to 20 cents per 10,000 operations. And while reading data in a cloud storage bucket located in a multi-region was free on the same continent, you'll now be charged just like any other data moved from Google Cloud locations on the same continent. Load balancing egress charges go from an eighth of a penny to a penny and a quarter, depending on the region. And default replication pricing in the US, NAM4, EU, and EUR4 location will increase from 0 per gigabyte to 2 pennies per gigabyte. And with default replication pricing in Asia and Asia 1 location will increase from 0 to 8 cents per gigabyte. So that can be a pretty big increase in cost for some people, depending on your portfolio. If you're doing a lot of data in cloud storage that you're accessing quite often, things got really expensive for you. If you store a lot of data in cloud storage and you don't touch it very often, your pricing just probably went down. That's how I would basically summarize this for you.
Any other time competitors align their prices to be, sort of more in line with each other, that's called a cartel.
well,
that's not really true.
I mean, if they were meeting in dark hotel rooms, talking about the pricing and that, hey, Google, you're screwing it up because you're not charging for this thing, and they all agreed that you should charge for it, and they did it, then that's price collusion that you can't.
That's collusion.
But yeah,
price matching is not
price matching is not the same.
Price matching is usually going down though, not going up.
Yeah,
I'm curious though about the compute intensive DevOps workloads, because I've yet to see a compute intensive DevOps workload.
yeah. I'd like to see one of those. That'd be great.
Yeah.
The thing about this is that one of the big differentiators people talk about is with Google is that data transfer charges between inner region are cheaper, but not anymore. Like now they're pretty expensive and they don't scale linear. They don't have a scale based on throughput. All of a sudden my SQL Server clusters that are on Google that replicate data between each other all of a sudden now have a cost they didn't have before. Like there's a lot of things here that are potentially problematic. And, I agree that, it probably makes it easier for customers to compare between different cloud vendors, but if this is a differentiator for you to get customers away from from Azure or AWS, then this is now removing that competitive advantage that you had as well. So, they must be desperate for money over there or something, because I don't quite get it.
Yeah, I wonder, because I was thinking about the way they announced it, the word choice was giving their customers choice, and so when I first started reading about this, all I heard was like Google's raising their prices. But then when I tried to dig deeper, it's like, all right, so I can see how I could use this to define my workloads and optimize for cost, which in a lot of senses is good. But then you start looking at the different things that they're charging for and their enterprise or production features, right? Like that's replication, things like that. That's stuff you need when you have real data. So it makes it a little tricky to include that in SLDC life cycles, and because now your environments aren't consistent, and I don't know. I'm going back and forth on this one.
It's kind of like the choice I have in my dining room. It says dinner choices: take it or leave it.
Nice.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's. I mean, I think it's fair for companies that are in the cloud, and Google's going to be competitive in the market. They're not just going to raise rates because they're a monopoly, which they're not. They're not even the leader. But I bet it does open individuals' eyes who are committing to these platforms and doing their math before they commit to them, and then the math changes to be more expensive after the fact. And I tried to relate it to someone who's used to old school IT spend, and you do your math and you buy the NetApp appliances that you need for your storage. And then 6 months later or a year later into the 4-year cycle, NetApp calls you and hey, we totally screwed up that pricing. We're not going to make money on the stuff we sold you. So we're going to ask you for a little more money now. We're going to need you to give us another 20%. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's one of the big arguments that people have made against the cloud forever is that, once they get you locked in, they're going to jack the rates up and then you're screwed because you're stuck there. And this is kind of that exact thing. This is now giving credence to those naysayers who've traditionally been able to say, yeah, that's not really true. I mean, yeah, net new compute is sometimes more expensive. Although in many cases we see that's actually not more expensive; it's actually less expensive still. Now we have an exact use case. Like, well, Google did it, so what stops Azure and AWS from doing it?
Yeah.
I think it should make anybody quite dubious about any service which is zero rated. It appears on the bill as a zero amount, and that's because they reserve the right to bill for that in the future.
Yeah,
I'd be less concerned about things they do charge for.
That's an interesting call out, right? Like they're already like isolating it, right, and itemizing it out, even though they're not charging for it. Just in case.
Well, I mean, it kind of goes to the Amazon's thing is like, they sometimes charge a pretty premium price for things, and we're kind of like, wow, that seems like a lot of money to charge for that, which we sort of feel is maybe a way to keep the floodgates at bay, so they can get people who really want the service. But then you see the prices drop over time as they get value out of these things. And so that seems like a better model. Be like, price it too high and then come down once you have economics to prove that it's not as expensive as you thought, or your scale actually got you the proof and the margin that you thought it would, versus starting out free and then charging more later. It's always a bad answer. It's interesting. One of the things I linked to in the show notes for this is a Reddit thread about this particular cost increase. And people, of course, on Hacker News are always sorry, not Reddit thread, Hacker News thread. On Hacker News are always kind of one way or the other and complaining about things. But there's an interesting comment here from F Nord Piglet. Again, I'm sorry, this is a terrible username thing. Who says he's an ex AWS senior leader of many products in AWS, and he says, Glacier is a perfect example of a product where they thought that hard drive costs would drop faster than tape storage. And so that was the original assumption of how they built the service. And then they realized that wasn't actually panning out to be true. And so they actually operated that service at a loss while they completely rewrote the architecture to be run on tape, and then basically moved customers seamlessly without you ever knowing about it to tape as they relaunched that service and started really championing again. So they ate the margin hit until they could come to a profitable answer. And that is an answer they do quite often, apparently, at AWS, because it's the right thing for the customer at the end of the day if they screwed up, which that's a nice thing to keep in mind when you think about your cloud provider and who you're choosing.
That is very interesting, because there's a lot of discussion about how they could possibly offer those prices and what the technology could be given the speed at which you could recover data, even though it was minutes to hours at the time. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think you and I think all of us have speculated at reInvent over beers. Like, how does the thing actually work? Because when they first launched it, you could pay a premium price and you could get it faster. And there was a lot of weird things like that you could do. And it was like, well, it can't be tape because that doesn't make any sense. But the cost has to be tape because the cost is so low. And Amazon was trying to play both sides of it. Like, well, we're going to do discs and we're going to do that because we think disc prices are going to continue to crater, which didn't happen. So, they made a bet that was wrong. And it kind of answers why we were like, this doesn't make any sense for tape, because it wasn't tape at the time. Now when you look at Glacier and you look at how the data stuff was, it feels very tape-ish, and now it really does feel like tape. Or before it did not.
That huge shortage of hard drives kind of came a couple of years after Glacier launched, I think, didn't it? Was it natural disaster in Thailand or something like that?
Oh yeah, it was the tsunami that hit.
That's right.
That part of
the world.
So
that put a lot of pressure on the hard drive market for years.
And now COVID. So yeah, it was a good move to tape. They would be in bad shape right now.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the Cloud Pod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
Well, if you are using Cloud Spanner, which is a fully managed relational database that offers near unlimited scale, strong consistency, and industry-leading high availability of 5 nines and Google lock-in, Google is finally giving you the benefit of committed use discounts, or CUDs, as we call them in the Google space, to further reduce cost for customers committing to Spanner. You can now get up to 40% discount on a 3-year term for Spanner, or 20% discount on a 1-year term. So you can now get all of your Cloud Spanner covered with CUDs, which is always nice.
at the Google Sales Conference, you just know there's a whole bunch of salespeople with like a cow T-shirt chewing. Just chew our cut. Oh,
it is a terrible name. Like every time. Yeah. And I talk about these more often than I like to in the day job because we're Google shop. And CUDS is in my now daily lexicon of conversation things we talk about. So, which is sort of weird. So it's getting used to it still. It's taking some time.
Oh, it's good to see discounts like this on committed use. So I guess it really is just the same discount they're offering for committed use for compute only, except they're applying that same type of discount to the underlying hardware that supports the service.
Yeah, I mean it's like RDS RIs or savings plans, right?
Exactly. And it's the funnest thing to buy committed use for is databases because they're always going to. I mean,
they run all the time.
To move a database. Yeah.
Not very many serverless databases.
This word fun you use, I don't know if it means what you think it means.
He's covering his face up slightly. I think he's actually lying to us.
Yeah, really.
Got his fingers crossed behind his back. Every database is only 5 years away from being replaced perpetually.
Exactly.
I mean, serverless databases all of a sudden make CUDs and RIs for that make no sense, but those products are still pretty early days. So maybe someday that'll be a better technology. Well, Google in other areas is also changing their support plans. So Google acknowledges that technical support is now more critical than ever, and they have a bad reputation of being bad at customer support. A reasonably priced tech support service for unlimited number of users is the standard offering, which is intended for general needs for small to medium businesses. And then they offer you enhanced support before you go into premium support. And enhanced support, you can have value-add services such as technical account advisors, as well as planned event support, just like IAM service from AWS, and assured support, which includes restricting your support personnel to geographic locations and attribute-based. That's now available to you, and they're giving you a 50% discount if you sign up by March 31st, which the show should drop just in time for you to get that discount if you're trying to do it. And if you're on the existing silver, gold, and role-based support services, those offerings will all end for you on May 31st, resulting in only 4 offerings: basic, standard, enhanced, and premium for your support needs. Premium is just like Amazon Premium or Enterprise or whatever.
Azure Premium.
Yeah. They should name it Ultra Premium. That'd be much better. And so they did all that. And then this other announcement came out that apparently Google employees are grilling their leadership over cloud support staff layoffs. And how do they plan to restore the trust for Google employees? Apparently, they laid off about 100 engineers across the Google Cloud technical support across many of their products, including Looker. And apparently, it particularly impacted their technical solution engineers, or TSEs, who help customers and engineers solve issues with Google Cloud apps and provide a critical layer between the platform and its users. Google apparently had mentioned previously to the team, to their employees, that they were going to be moving those roles eventually to partners and to lower cost regions as people kind of left the company and all that. So now they've laid people off to force that process much faster, and that's where the violation of trust has come into play. So cutting support offerings, increasing prices, and cutting costs. Sounds like a business that maybe is in trouble. I don't know. It's definitely very interesting that they're focusing very heavily on costs. Also, some of the things they've done recently around sales compensation. Like either Google's just trying to get much more structured in how they're approaching compensation and how they're approaching economics of the cloud, and they're just trying to get to profitability, or there's a lot of pressure somewhere to cut costs at Google Cloud.
I mean, they're marching towards reducing like the amount of loss that Google Cloud, does every year. And so a lot of these changes, seem to be in line with that, where it's a little bit about the bottom dollar.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way, which is, but like having an account team from Google now, I can tell you that they bring a lot of legs to the table. It's like your account team is like 12 people deep. If you're an enterprise account, like there's a lot of people involved in your accounts that, I'm sure they all are very valuable people. And I like all the ones that I have on my account. But every enterprise account of my size has that level of investment from Google. That's a lot, comparatively to what I used to have on AWS or even on Azure, where I had to beg and plead to get a salesperson on the phone at Azure. Clearly there's other models that work as well.
Yeah.
What does that team look like exactly? I mean, is it more technical people? Is it access to sort of cloud product engineering kind of resources? How is 12 people better than 2 people?
So you have a salesperson as well as a regional salesperson assigned. So that's your sales pipeline. And then you have, solutions architects basically assigned. And he's, there's 2 or 3 people who support him who are specialists. You've got your TAM, and then a whole TAM support organization, including all of your cloud concierge type people who are helping with billing and those type of issues. And then you have a whole professional services attachment, which has a bunch of people who are tied to that. And then you get, like a Google Workspaces person. If you're doing Google Workspaces, you get Google Ads attachment. You get a bunch of other things like that as well, if you're using those products.
Oh, nice.
So it's it's an army of people plus the partner, and the partner then of course brings in their army of people as well. So you go to a QBR and you're outnumbered 2 to 1 easily.
To be fair, Amazon does this too, but you only see like a third or half the account team, and they just rotate them every 2 months, which is why it's always changing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I can understand that they're tweaking their support model. It sucks when people have to get laid off, but I also, as a customer, but I want my vendor to have a healthy bottom line and be happy with their business and excited to expand it.
Yeah. I mean, as a partner, I'm sure this is, like being able to take this is an opportunity, but yeah, it's not under the best circumstances.
I think people are disappointed that effort was not made to find new positions for those staff. At least not that we know of. And that's
Right.
always a bit disappointing when you've had employees for a number of years and you don't kind of treat them with the maybe the respect and the value they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Well, if they're going to fire 100 people at Google, I'd prefer they fire 100 people from the marketing team, because this week I learned that the Google Chronicle team, which is like their SIM product, they're blogging on Medium instead of on the Google official blogs, which is what we track for the show. So, there's this thing that came in from, one of the other trade presses, and I was like, why did I not hear this Google Chronicle thing? And then I look at the article and it's like, from their recent blog post, and you click on it, it's on Medium. I'm like, really? Who's using Medium for enterprise stuff? So anyways, fire some marketing people who need to combine all these Google blog posts from all over the place and collapse them together. But there, Google in the Chronicle space is announcing in preview the context-aware detections in Google Chronicle. With the release, Google is creating efficiencies in every step of customers' detection and response journey by making alerts more functionally enabled. With context-aware detections, all supporting information from authoritative sources like the CMDB, IAM, or DLP solution, including telemetry, context, relationships, and vulnerabilities, are available out of the box as a single detection event. This allows you to prioritize threats with risk scoring, respond to your alerts faster, and enhance fidelity of your alerting. This launch fixes a gap in legacy analytics and SIM products where data has historically been logically separated due to prohibitive economics, which I read as, you put your logs in Splunk, but it's too expensive for everything else. So we did all the other stuff in the other tool, and now they both have the same data because we couldn't put the data together because it would cost too much money. So I read it.
You're exactly right. Like, there's so many sources of data where there's too much noise, and so it's expensive to have that searchable, right? So you make some of it available, and then when you get closer to needing to tie that together, then you get just access to the dark room in the back where just printed out zeros and ones.
I guess they're very cost conscious if they're publishing on a Medium now, requiring their customers to pay for a subscription to want to read their blog.
We can't afford our own blog infrastructure, so yeah.
Yeah.
You can't, I mean, at least use like a Jekyll static page generator. I mean, like, I can't ask you that much, right? Like, come on. I have a great cloud quest that could teach you how to do it on Amazon for like pennies on the dollar.
What if they use Sumerian for that, or if it's just something completely separate? I'm kind of wondering, like, why. Never mind. We've moved on. It's going to take a while for that to sink in.
Yeah. You'll have thoughts later.
I mean, I love solutions like this if they work, right? We were talking about this. Like, if what it does is make that just noise of alerts of, the one bucket that is okay for it to be public because it's hosting a static content site and it's got, the right IP restrictions or other mitigations or something like that, from just generating miles and miles of noise that a poor SOC team is having to sort through. And this allows you to add context to that. In theory, I've never actually seen this work where it has the right context plugged in where it can actually make a decent decision and highlight actual risk versus something that's not all that risky.
I think that's my complaint about these context things. Is the context they're aware of is typically their context. So in this case, Google is aware of their context of how these things are put together, but they don't know my business context. They don't know my technology context, how my app uses the data. And so ultimately, anytime I've seen this context aware marketing speak, it kind of raises this like, but how would I actually tell you my context? Like, how would I teach you that? Unless you're applying, looking for patterns and things like with machine learning or AI, but that's not part of this announcement. So I like the idea of context aware because it's a big factor in how you think about risk, but I need to be able to define my context. And unless you can do that in a way that makes sense, I don't know how this helps you beyond knowing that now you're at least applying the context to Google. So maybe that eliminates some of the noise.
Yeah. I mean, they allow you to write rules. And so, you could sort of tie in your own context there, but then what happens is that you have a whole bunch of, security analysts who don't have the context writing the rules. And so it just never works out.
Security tools, always fun to talk about, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's talk about partners at Azure, which is everyone's favorite topic. We'll go through this one real quick. But basically, Microsoft is announcing some new capabilities for their partners to help grow their mutual businesses. And typically, I just send this to Peter and say, hey, you want to know about this? But there is some benefit to you as a normal Azure user. So first of all, they're now making private offers with margin sharing available to their 90,000 plus cloud partners. So now ISVs can use private offer capability in the commercial marketplace to create and share margins to partners in the cloud solution provider program, increasing the agility with private offers for customers. And with enhancements to private offers in the commercial marketplace, ISVs can now create a unique private offer per customer in less than 15 minutes. Microsoft points out that digital buying has become accelerating since COVID because no one wants to see people in person, and allows partners to embrace the marketplace as a valid sales channel for all of Azure's customers. So again, this will be a lot more marketplace offers for all of you Azure users out there from your partners. There's no mention to me in this about how it impacts your commitments to Azure spend or any of those kind of things. I don't know if they do those type of programs. So there's a lot of details that I don't actually have insight on in this particular space. So do ask your sales rep if you can reach them, which we talked about earlier. You can't reach them, but if you can, ask the question.
This is effectively allowing resellers to generate margin by cutting their own deals with the ISVs that are on the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be called Azure Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's fine. I mean, if you're the customer, you want one bill, and it is tough for partners when you tell them, hey, when you're going to pass a bunch of revenue through your books and you're going to get zero margin on that. And if your customer defaults on it, you're stuck holding the bag. It's like, nah, it doesn't sound like that much fun.
No, that sounds awful. Well, and then something we talked about previously, the Azure Health Data Services platform as a service offering is now generally available. It's designed to support all of your PHI data in the cloud if you're in the healthcare space. We did talk about this in beta, so I will not talk about it as much this time. But the final set of features I included in the GA, it does give you provide you a suite of health data APIs, enabling you to securely ingest and unify PHI in the cloud. Things like FUR, APIs, DICOM, streaming data from medtech devices, and unstructured data from clinical notes or health documents, all connected through the FUR text analytics capability. It also enables tools for data management, including de-identification, event notification, and transformation of data for downstream uses. Connects your PHI data to a powerful technology in the Microsoft Cloud for healthcare systems, including deep analytics and AI development, beginning with one click to push PHI data to Azure Synapse Analytics using the Synapse link for FUR, where you can send it to Power BI for all your visualizations. You can enlist trust with layered in-depth defense and advanced threat protection aligned with strict industry compliance standards and regulatory requirements, including ISO, GDPR, HITRUST, CSF, and HIPAA through BA coverage. Azure Health Data Services helps provide customers and payers meet the requirements of the 21st Century Cures Act and CMS interoperability and patient access final rules, and overall lowers the costs in the cloud with a consumption-based pricing model that gives you full transparency with a pay only for what you use structure. The Azure Health Data Services removes infrastructure costs associated with multiple accounts, only charging for storage, API calls, transformation, and conversion as used, which means you can try the service for smaller workloads and control costs as you add more complex workloads over time. All available to you now through your Microsoft rep on the healthcare side.
So I don't know what the highest civilian honor that we grant is in this country, but you deserve it for making it all the way through this article. I tried to, and oh man, this one's a rough read.
It's one of those ones like, I try to get through the MLAI stories and I'm like, I don't understand anything they're talking about with training and all stuff like that. Like, having dabbled in just enough healthcare to know what most of this is, I can make it through it. But yeah, if you've never done anything with healthcare or high trust or HIPAA laws or CFR Part 11 regulations, like a lot of this doesn't make any sense to you. So appreciate you listening to me ramble through that.
And most of it's not any. This is not the fun part of that industry. So it's great when you take the fun part and say, hey, you don't have to do that part anymore.
We've already talked about you and the word fun. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what to trust.
I think you would agree with me that is not the fun part.
It doesn't sound fun. Yeah. There's a lot of acronyms.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Peter, take us to the lightning round, please.
Oh, no. Okay. I'll do that. Let's start with Amazon MSK Connect. Now supports external secrets and configuration with config providers.
I mean, it's so awesome that you can put your external secret onto your MSK Connect bus and then ship that secret to everybody. So perfect.
Well, it's much better than authenticating to Kafka with, hard-coded credentials in your source code, right?
Yeah. How does it work exactly? So there's the secrets and the secrets you don't know.
Let's not get into a debate about how you unlocked your vault, because that's a whole conversation that we don't have time for.
There's 6 other Amazon services you'll need to make that work. Yeah.
And at least 6 of them run containers. So
all right. Amazon Comprehend launches an entity-based sentiment analysis.
That sounds like
my sentiments are that I still don't understand comprehend. That's my sentiment.
You can tell that, the people who wrote this post also know that you don't know what comprehend is or does, because it's just like it goes everywhere, like reading through it. It's like, comprehend is machines learn now, I guess, kind of.
I missed Jonathan's comment because everybody was talking over each other.
I said it sounds like a trip.
Oh, a trip.
Because of the entities.
Gotcha.
Nice.
How about AWS Systems Manager, Change Manager now supports taking actions on multiple change requests together?
Can't wait for this to get a feature in a couple of weeks. Like AWS Systems Manager, Change Manager now supports sequencing multiple changes together because someone screwed this up really badly.
Yeah. Turns out you can't make them all go at once. That's a bad plan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You want to create the database and drop it at the same time with 2 different change tickets at the same time? Okay, fine. That's fine. We'll do that. No problem. Sure.
Ship it.
Signed by Mr. Rube Goldberg. Trust me, it'll work. It's going to be great.
Do you think he actually signed things, or do you think he built a machine that signed things for him?
Oh, nice.
Ooh, yeah. Don't have the answer. All right. Well, let's keep going. Let's go with public preview announcement. Azure Purview workflows now in public preview.
They really didn't announce anything this week, did they?
We ran out of things to announce.
Scrape the bottom of the barrel,
between healthcare. Whoa.
Yeah. The workflow for Azure is getting really rough right now. That's why I need Purview to help me with it.
How about another one? Azure backup support for trusted launch Azure virtual machines in public preview.
Yeah, so, you said they were trusted, but if I couldn't back them up, how much trust could I put on them?
Yeah.
Trust them to forget things, maybe?
Trust you to lose your data. Perfect.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I want in a VM.
Amazon Route 53 Resolver DNS firewall now significantly reduces their service cost.
Hey, Google, take notes.
Oh. Jeez Louise.
Yeah, before, every time you created a new firewall rule in the service, it was literally someone behind the scenes checking this in as fast as possible. So now they've finally automated it, which is why they can reduce the costs.
Maybe. And AWS Cost Anomaly Detection supports integration with AWS Chatbot.
I swear it was already integrated because I get messages from my CFO every month the bill comes.
Yeah.
Like clockwork. I swear that was already there.
Yeah. I think they give CFOs a public preview of this. Goes to their phones, goes to their chat service, email, smoke signals.
He's gotten really creative with the emojis, though, man. I didn't know you could swear on that many emojis, but man, it's impressive. Slack really gives him a lot of options.
I just get the knife, like and nothing else.
Yeah. The problem is the tap axis. There's not a lot of options to tap axe, so like you get this really creative, and like all you can do is plus like thumbs up, dude. Like, it's not about the cost. It's about the emoji. It's like it's great.
Well, to wrap this round up, I gotta give it to Take Notes, Google on the price cut, which is so relevant since now we have a favorite topic of the day.
Topical. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about putting this together. That's new strategy for the lightning round. Look at that. Yeah. Invented it on the fly. I didn't even think of that at the time. Partially, I wrote the jokes before I knew what the announcement of the week was going to be. But all right. Well, things are coming up. This is your last chance to probably sign up for both the SQL Server and Azure SQL Conference, which is on April 5th through the 7th, as well as the Google Cloud Summit on Data Cloud on April 6th. So this is your last chance to get to those. And then we are approaching very quickly April, which means May is right around the corner, which means IBM Think and KubeCon Europe are coming up in early May. And then in early June, we have RSA Conference. And I'll save the rest for you to check out the show notes. But lots of conferences coming. Oh, yeah, I did forget about the DevOps Enterprise Summit virtual in Europe, the 10th through 12th of May. It's also available, which is a great enterprise class DevOps Summit if you're into all things DevOps. So do check those out. And that is it for another fantastic week here in the cloud. Have a good night, guys.
See you later.
Good night.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel, go to our website, thecloudpod.net for sign-up instructions.